When I married David, I believed I was finally stepping into peace. After a rocky first marriage riddled with chaos, David offered something different: quiet stability. He wasn't poetic nor overly romantic, but he showed up when it mattered. That was enough, I thought. It had to be. We moved into a modest 2-story house on the edge of town. It was the kind of neighborhood where porch lights glowed like watchful eyes and neighbors smiled too tightly. That's where I first met Ethan, David's son from his previous marriage. He was 14 then, lanky and awkward with a quietness that made me feel like I was always intruding. I tried to be gentle, motherly without overstepping. I never wanted to replace his mother, only to support, guide, and care. Over time, he warmed up, or so I believed. Now Ethan is 21, in his 3rd year at university, though he visits home often. Too often. Most college kids avoid home like a chore, but Ethan would appear unannounced on weekends, sometimes midweek. At first, I was delighted. Who wouldn't be? I baked more, stocked his favorite cereal, washed his laundry without being asked. I thought it was our bond growing deeper. I was wrong. Then there's Maya, my best friend. We met 5 years ago, at a yoga class, and instantly clicked. Maya is everything I'm not: vivacious, flirtatious, unfiltered. She dances through life like consequences don't exist. While I plan meals and check grocery lists twice, Maya books spontaneous flights and laughs at her own scandals. We balanced each other out. At least I used to think so. She was a regular in our home, especially when David started traveling. More for work. Wine nights, backyard brunches, long talks on the porch that drifted into dusk. She often joked about how she'd never settle down, how men were like appetizers, best enjoyed in variety. I'd laugh, shake my head, call her hopeless. In hindsight, I should have listened more carefully. David had changed too. Somewhere between business trips and mortgage payments, he drifted. The touches became absent-minded, the conversations shallow. He'd claim stress, deadlines, and I, in my endless attempts to be understanding, accepted it. I told myself all marriages hit these lulls, but deep down, I felt the chill creeping in. The house, once a place of warmth and laughter, now echoed with silence. I started noticing things, subtle things. Ethan arriving late at night, smelling faintly of perfume that didn't belong to any girl he'd introduced me to. His phone was always face down, always silenced. Once I thought I heard laughter from his room, a woman's laughter, soft and familiar. But by the time I reached his door, it was quiet, and I told myself I imagined it. That's what denial does. It convinces you your instincts are betrayal. Claire, my coworker and confidant, had her doubts too. Over coffee breaks and whispered office chats, she'd raise an eyebrow at my stories. Maya's there again? And Ethan just happened to be home? She'd ask, voice laced with caution. I'd shrug it off, laugh nervously. You know Maya, she doesn't have boundaries. Claire never laughed back. Rachel, she said once, gently but firmly, don't let comfort blind you. Sometimes the people closest to us are the ones holding the match. Still, I refused to light that thought. Maya was my friend, Ethan was my stepson, David was my husband. I believed in lines that people didn't cross, boundaries that were sacred. One Sunday afternoon, while David was away on a conference trip, Maya dropped by uninvited. Ethan was home too, coincidentally. We all sat in the kitchen, me making tea, Maya perched on the counter swinging her legs, Ethan nursing a beer. They laughed at some private joke. I didn't understand the punchline, but I smiled anyway. Later that evening, Maya claimed she had plans and left. Ethan said he was going to meet some friends. The house emptied quickly, almost too quickly. Alone in the quiet, I stood by the window watching the driveway, feeling something twist low in my stomach. It wasn't jealousy, it wasn't suspicion. It was a deeper dread, like sensing an approaching storm before the first drop falls. That night, I dreamt of broken glass, of laughter turning into whispers, then silence. When I woke up, everything felt the same, and yet different, like the walls themselves were hiding secrets. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was tired, that I trusted them. But trust, I would soon learn, is not a shield. It's a blindfold. Rain had started falling before I turned onto our street. It smeared the windshield in lazy streaks, making the world outside look blurred, like it didn't want to be seen clearly. Fitting, I thought. Claire and I had cut our weekend retreat short after her son came down with a fever. I hadn't told anyone I was coming home early. Not David, not Ethan, not Maya. I wanted to surprise them. Maybe bake something, feel useful. I had no idea the one being surprised would be me. When I stepped into the house, the lights were low. The air was still, heavy with the scent of sandalwood and something else, sweeter, more intoxicating. A woman's perfume. One I recognized but couldn't place in the moment. I called out lightly, "Hello?" But no one responded. The silence was suspicious. Ethan's car was in the driveway. The living room showed signs of life. An open soda can, a folded blanket on the couch, a single red heel peeking out from behind the ottoman. My heartbeat quickened. That twisting dread from before, the one I had ignored, uncoiled inside me like a serpent waking. Footsteps, faint, overhead. And then, laughter. A woman's, playful, familiar. I moved slowly, carefully, like someone afraid to spook a wild animal. Each stair creaked beneath my weight, but I couldn't stop. My mind had already begun to race ahead, assembling possibilities, most of them too disturbing to name. When I reached Ethan's bedroom door, it was ajar. I placed my hand on it, my fingers trembling. I don't know what I expected. A girl he hadn't introduced me to? A silly hookup? But it wasn't just any girl, it was Maya, my best friend, my confidant, my sister in everything but blood. She was sitting on Ethan's bed, her blouse halfway buttoned, her bare shoulder visible under the thin sheet. Her eyes met mine first, widening in horror before darting away. Ethan stood behind her, shirtless, frozen mid-sentence, his face draining of color. No one spoke. No one had to. The image burned itself into me. I wanted to unsee it, to erase it, to rewind time. But there it was, unfolding in front of me like a scene from a nightmare I couldn't wake from. I turned and walked away. Down the stairs, through the hallway, out the front door. The rain soaked me in seconds, but I didn't care. I couldn't breathe in that house. The betrayal clung to the walls like mold. My stomach turned violently as I staggered to the sidewalk, my arms wrapped around myself, not for warmth, but to keep from falling apart. My phone rang. David. I stared at the screen until it stopped. Then it rang again. And again. Finally, I answered. My voice came out cracked and cold. "How long have you known?" A pause. Then David said, "Rachel, please, let's talk." "How long, David?" His breath was audible on the line, shaky. "A few months. I walked in on them. Once. Ethan begged me not to tell you. He said it was over. I believed him. I didn't want to hurt you." "You didn't want to hurt me?" I repeated, almost laughing. "So you protected them instead?" He stammered, tried to explain, to justify. But I'd stopped listening. I was too busy watching every year of my life with them disintegrate like ash in the rain. I sat on the front steps for what felt like hours. Maya never came outside. Ethan didn't either. Maybe they thought I'd disappear if they just stayed hidden. Cowards often do. Eventually, Claire arrived. I don't remember calling her, but she was there, wrapping me in her coat, guiding me to her car. I collapsed into the seat and finally let the tears come. Not the gentle kind. These were guttural, choking sobs that made my chest ache and my throat raw. "I'm here," Claire whispered. "Whatever you need. However long it takes." I wanted to say something, but all I could think of was Maya's laugh, still echoing in my ears, Ethan's eyes wide with guilt, and David's cowardice disguised as care. 3 people I had loved, trusted, and defended. All of them knew. All of them chose to betray me. And somehow, I had been the last to see it. As Claire drove us away from the house that no longer felt like home, I watched the raindrops race across the window. Everything I thought was solid had crumbled in a single night, but part of me knew deep down that the storm was far from over. Grief doesn't always arrive with death. Sometimes it walks through the front door dressed in betrayal, sits beside you at your own table, and sips tea from a cup you once offered with love. I stayed with Claire for a week. Her spare room became my sanctuary, dimly lit, smelling of lavender and second chances. She never pushed, never pried, just placed hot tea by my door each morning and let me unravel in silence. I didn't respond to David's messages. I couldn't. Every time his name flashed on my phone, my body tensed like it was preparing for war. There was nothing left to explain. He'd made his choice long before that night. He chose to protect Ethan, to protect Maya. He didn't choose me. The silence from Ethan was even louder. Not a text, not an apology, just absence. I heard from a neighbor that he'd returned to campus, vanished, as if nothing had happened. And Maya? She disappeared entirely. Her social media accounts were deactivated. The yoga group she taught released a vague statement about personal leave. Cowardice comes in many forms. Hers wore lipstick and silence. One morning, Claire slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside were photos, screenshots, time-stamped messages, and fragments of conversations I hadn't known existed. I thought you should see it, she said gently. Maya and Ethan didn't just happen. It wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. Their affair had begun more than a year ago, while Ethan was still 19. Maya had pursued him, flirted shamelessly even at our dinner table. The messages were sickening. She spoke of me casually, like I was a prop in her little game. She has no idea. Poor Rachel thinks I'm giving him career advice. Claire watched me with careful eyes as I absorbed every poisoned word. I didn't cry this time. I'd already shed all the tears betrayal could demand. What I felt now was sharper. Clarity. I went home that afternoon, not to forgive, but to retrieve my life. David was waiting at the door like a man begging for absolution he didn't earn. I know there's nothing I can say, he began. His voice cracked, his eyes glassy. But I love you. I still love you. I looked past him. The house felt foreign, like walking through a stranger's memories. I nodded once and said only, I'm filing for divorce. His face crumbled. Please, Rachel, please. But love is not a leash, and trust, once snapped, doesn't knot back the same way. I moved my things out that evening. Claire helped. David didn't stop us. That night, in her apartment, I finally wrote Maya a letter. I didn't intend to send it. I wrote it for myself, for the version of me who needed closure. You didn't just betray me, Maya. You broke something sacred. You wore my trust like a mask, laughed in my home, and touched someone I raised as my own. You saw everything I gave and chose to take more. But here's what you didn't break. Me. You exposed your character, not mine. I hope one day you understand what you cost yourself because I never needed revenge. I needed the truth, and now I have it. I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer beside my bed. Some wounds don't need to be shared. They just need to stop bleeding. Weeks passed. Life somehow continued. I returned to work. I cooked for one. I watered my own plants. And in the quiet, I discovered something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the peace that comes from predictable routine or polite smiles. This was a different kind. A fierce, defiant peace, one earned through fire. I began taking walks alone. I deleted old photos. I blocked numbers, unsubscribed from shared memories. I stopped looking for closure in other people's apologies. One evening, while watching the sunset from Claire's balcony, I whispered to no one, "They didn't break me. They freed me." Because that's the truth no one tells you about betrayal. It cuts, yes. It wounds deep. But it also clears the path. It burns down the false comfort so something truer can rise. I still think about Ethan sometimes. About how I loved him like a son. About how he chose someone who treated love like a toy. Maybe one day he'll regret it. Maybe he won't. But that's not my burden anymore. This is my story now. And I'm the one holding the pen.